Hello, hello, hello. Episode 4 here to give you more of Funny Cast shows. And it's your boy Sugar Dunkerton, aka Sugar D for short, aka Shug D for even shorter. What's going on, everybody? This episode could get a little dicey, could get a little long. So I'm changing up how I usually start things off, and I'm giving you this intro beforehand before we start getting into anything. First and foremost, I just want to say thanks. Very, very strong first week for the show in terms of listeners and downloads and subscribers, and I appreciate that very much. I know this was like a big project for me to even get started on, so just getting that initial love on the ground floor is huge to me, and I appreciate the support and you guys opening your ears and your hearts for just the mess that goes across this show and out of my mouth. So I appreciate it, but I feel like people are getting good things out of it, and there's been a lot of good response, so I appreciate that very much. Furthermore, this particular episode is very close to my heart. That's why I said it could get kind of long. I never thought I'd have a chance to be able to tell this story out of all the stories that I have to tell, because I'm never one to try to cash in on something, especially if it hurts somebody or it affects them negatively. Jimmy Jacobs, professional wrestler, former WWE writer, just all around creative mind, and eccentric, very, very, very huge eccentric. He actually shared a story that we had together on a flight on the recent episode of Talk Is Jericho. It got brought to my attention. I had no idea he was about to start trailing off into that, which was very liberating, and it's even more liberating the fact that he gave me permission to go ahead and discuss my take on it, which I think is kind of cool, because with these kind of situations, it's a stopover in the story that he had to tell for the podcast, but it's like a major story for mine. So it's just cool being able to get that kind of perspective and just to dive a little deeper into a lot of the funny as well as the real feeling that came out of that story. So what I would highly suggest is you go back, you listen to Talk Is Jericho, that particular episode with Jimmy Jacobs, then come back to this one, or listen to this one and then go back and listen to the Talk Is Jericho, whichever way you want to. That way you're just getting all parts, and I feel like you'll get way, way, way more out of this. Whether you're a wrestling fan or you're not a wrestling fan, I feel like this episode is going to give you something a little special. It's definitely a lesson in sometimes getting a lesson out of things you weren't planning on getting a lesson out of. So I think that'll be fun. Don't forget, I'm trying to make it easy for you guys. I've got you on iTunes. I've got you on Stitcher, on YouTube. If you go to my channel at www.youtube.com/Sugardunkerton, I've got all the episodes in audio format up there as well too, so that you're able to stream it that way. Subscribe, stream, download, however it is that you gotta do to get this in your system. I'm here to make you laugh a little and to give you a little bit of encouragement about how things are going as you make your chase for whatever your dream is. Also, don't forget www.prowrestlingtees.com/Sugardunkerton. Please grab some shirts. That's a fashionable way for me to give back to you for supporting me. Everybody wins. Everybody stays fresh. That said, this is a very special episode. It deserved a very special intro. And after a little quick word, we come back, we kick this thing off, and we talk a little bit about the magic that is Jimmy Jacobs on this very, very special episode of Funny Cast Shows. Yep. Depression affects approximately 14.8 million Americans each year. It's time we fought back. Professional wrestler Tara Calloway had high hopes of showing those who struggle with depression that they are not alone in the fight. Those hopes have now been turned into a project that is dedicated to helping those who are wishing to find a different way, a positive way of being able to battle their depression. Dropkick Depression offers an online help center and resources for those who wish to reach out and get help handling their depression, as well as also offering fundraising and awareness campaigns to bring light to the fact that depression is not just a mood. And suicide is a very large and growing problem in our world that we are trying to help prevent by showing value in those who have to deal with this. Dropkick Depression also has the resources for you to be able to organize and put on events, be it professional wrestling shows, 5K runs, or other creative activities to help bring awareness to this cause and bring light to the growing troubles of depression in our society. You can find them at dropkickdepression.com, and you're also able to reach them on Twitter at Operation DD. That is Operation DD. Please help us kick out at 2 on the fight against depression. And remember, you are not alone in this fight. Reach out, let's make that hot tag, and let's fight depression together.
It's about that time, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the soul seductive sounds of the Soul City Shouty. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Sugar D.
Keep the beat them. Yeah. That boy good. He laced me up so nicely every time. Everybody have a seat. It's that time. Funny Cash shows. You know what it is. Sugar D on the stage. What's going on, everybody? Apparently, we didn't screw up too much because we made it through 3 episodes at the same damn time, and we are still standing. We are here for episode number 4. Now, I know security was kind of tight getting in because I said this was going to be a very, 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 very special episode. And I'm not playing with you. This is going to be a good one. Not that I don't think any of my other offerings are good, but I just know this one is going to be special. I say this because this particular episode, man, it will forever be one of those experiences that was a life changer. And on top of that, it's the exact premise on which this show was founded upon, where sometimes you get hit with some very life-altering type stuff that happens to you, and it can't help but be mixed with a little bit of hilarity, just a dash of funny to go along with it. So I get to tell it in all of its glory today. And this is just one of those stories that I thought I'd never be able to tell. It wasn't until people started hitting me up via various social media about the fact that Sugar Dunkerton had got a mention on Talk Is Jericho. Never thought that would happen in a million years, but that happened courtesy of Jimmy Jacobs. Now, for my non-wrestling fans that listen to this show, Jimmy Jacobs is what we would call an eccentric. He's a mind. He is slightly deranged, but I think we love all of this about him. We do. Jimmy Jacobs is one of those guys I've just always had a strange chemistry with since the moment that I met him. And the story in particular that I'm going to be getting into today, again, is surreal. There's a thing that I want to let people know who are first-time viewers for this show, and for those who listen to the debut 3 episodes that I had, I can't stress enough. If you think I'm lying, you would be blown away by how truthful the stories are. But then at the same time, if I try to sell you on the fact that I'm telling you the truth, you would swear out I'm lying or I'm embellishing about things that are being told. So I just tell it, and it's up to you. You can feel however you want to feel about what it is that I'm telling you or how it's being portrayed. But, you're going to make your own decisions about what it is that you're hearing anyway. I just highly hope that you're entertained and you get something out of it when it's all said and done. As far as what I got for you in terms of stories about my colleague and, I'd like to call a friend, Jimmy Jacobs, hey, it's completely up to you how you take it. I just know what I lived with this particular gentleman. That said, I'm super happy about the fact that he's finding his way ever since returning to the independent wrestling circuit. For those who are wrestling fans, they're very aware about the fact that he was a writer for WWE most recently, and due to Selfie Gate, in regards to an incident where the Bullet Club was invading an episode of Raw, it put him in a situation where they decided they had to let him go. But at the same time, it was just time in his heart, which he goes through and explains a little bit on that Talk Is Jericho broadcast. And I think this is very funny in terms of how detailed sometimes a story can get, or where a story fits in the overall narrative of what somebody's got going on. Jimmy mentioned it, and he put some light on our particular story on the plane because it was a kickoff that sent him in the direction of being able to get that job with WWE. Now, for all the stuff that he had to cover on that particular broadcast, that particular story was just a small chapter in a very, very large book that he's still writing. But if we put it on my show, from my perspective, it's an entire episode. It's something completely huge to talk about. It kind of reminds me of a Marvel comic that came out once upon a time where they focused on the people that were affected by certain big events that happened in very major Marvel stories. I think the closest that we've seen to something like this on screen would have been the Batman versus Superman, not trying to switch comics, but in Batman versus Superman, where that extremely large scale fight that happened from the movie Man of Steel was shown on a smaller level, where normal people were affected by all this damage and debris and explosions that were happening. And from a higher level, it's just like, oh man, Superman's fighting the bad guy and he's doing what it takes to go ahead and take him down. But it's on such a high level that sometimes you don't see how it affects in a smaller scale. Like, there were people that were really having their lives affected by what ended up happening. So it looks like this big thing from up here, but it's causing all these ripple effects when you look at it from down there. So this would be the ripple effect of something that was a bigger part of his story. And I can't encourage you enough, aside from Talk Is Jericho being an awesome podcast, by the way, I can't encourage you enough to go and just listen to Talk Is Jericho if you get the opportunity for the Jimmy Jacobs episode, and just really listen to what that man has been through, what his mind state is, what it's like on that higher level when you reach WWE, and what it's like now that he's back and he's chasing some different dreams now on the independent circuit. I am still in shock that I'm going to be able to tell this story. And it changes the format that I feel like those who listen to the original three have, hopefully anyway, gotten used to hearing. But, I got to deliver it this way because it's a lot. And in order to get the most, which is what I want to give to anybody that listens to it, I want to give you the most in terms of laughs, and I want to give you the most in terms of feeling that settles with you. I got to give this the time that it deserves, and it's going to get the time that it deserves. Because it's about some larger than life personalities that just need that kind of time and exposition in order for this to be able to be at its most effective. Now, for my non-wrestling fans who will be paying attention to this episode, I just want you to know, like I mentioned, wrestling is a part of my life. It's not all that I intend to talk about on this show. I feel like a lot of what I discuss and what we get into is universal when it's all said and done. It's just there are, of course, are some stories that happen to relate to what it is that I end up doing a lot because, yeah, I am a professional wrestler. I also do a ton of other things, but that's the main hustle for me. That said, I will do everything I can to footnote things as best as possible, but I'm wanting more so for you guys to listen for the overall point when it's all said and done. So I will do everything I can to be as descriptively entertaining as possible about all of this, because this is a lesson that everybody should take from this episode. Okay, so if everybody is comfortable, everybody's good. I have given all proper disclaimers because I haven't given all proper disclaimers. Let me back up. There'll be some cursing. There'll be some recreational drug talk. I'm going for it on this one because now that I know that I got the blessing and the green light on this, I'm going all the way on it. If I were you, I would probably Google search Jimmy Jacobs. Preferably, I feel like he would come up first on the list, but just to be sure, Jimmy Jacobs wrestler, and do your research on him. Get a good look at him, because I just want you to be able to have that component too of understanding what the subject matter is if we're going to be doing a episode that is highly revolving around this big personality. So, if you want, you could pause it for just a moment. That way you can do your Google search and make sure everything's good to go. I'll be right here. I promise I'm not going anywhere. And that should be long enough of a pause right there, if they already hit the pause on whatever their device is. So before I get into everything, I just also want to thank you guys for listening, and however it is you chose to listen to it. And remember, we do have all the avenues of iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher, aside from Podbean, for you to be able to get your fix of funny cast shows. I also want to thank IWA Mid-South, Black Label Pro Wrestling, as well as EWF for having me in their respective houses over Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, as I had a trio of shows in Indiana. And I got some more coming up this week. I will be at New South Pro Wrestling in Hartselle, Alabama. And I'm going to be putting in a little appearance at One Fall Wrestling over there at the Landmark Arena in Cornelia, Georgia. Just giving them a look, see what they got going on. You never know, I might get into a little trouble as well over there. All very, very good shows based in the South, and I definitely give them a look if you got the opportunity to do so. All right. So let's get into it. And the way I want to get into it is, as opposed to getting into kind of like the exposition part, this is going to be a combination of how I know Jimmy and just a little bit of exposition before I get into the bigger story. That way, when we get into the story, you are equipped with this thing known as knowledge, so that you'll be able to get more out of it. For those who don't know, he started as this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed wrestler with furry boots who would do the huss deal that the Berserker used to do from very, very old school WWF back then, which is now WWE. And he would evolve from that into this deranged, almost like a homicidal version of Prince. If there's one thing that I have to give him credit for in his career, it's the fact that he always keeps things interesting and he's ever evolving. Just when you think the strange levels have reached critical mass, he's always finding a way to top that just that little bit. And I believe that's why he's been so successful for such a long time, because he's been able to apply that creative mind in order to keep things fresh, not just for himself, but obviously for others when you get into other things. Jimmy has been known to have a long history of certain kinds of mind-altering substances, as well as just sometimes having his ups and downs as far as with his emotions in this business. He's only human, and all of us are fallible in a way. I mean, recently I had to come to grips with the fact that I had depression. I had to make good with that, and that was about almost a month or two ago. And it was very strange for me trying to make good with that, because not to bring this piece into it, but as a black male, it's very weird for us to openly say there's something wrong with us in that regard. Usually we're supposed to just suck it up and just kind of move forward. Like, that's for other folk. It ain't for us. We're supposed to be the epitome of hard, And I had to get okay with the fact that, it's affecting me. It's messing with my life, and I need to do something about it. And I did. And part of what heals me is this, just being able to talk and put this kind of information out in the world and just, be able to make people laugh and make people feel good and give them stories that just kind of fire them up to let them know that, hey, you can get more done. And I think there's a lot to learn in just how open and free. And yeah, he went to some dark places, but look where he's at now. I love the fact that he was able to rise back from some of those dark places and be here to give us more in terms of how he is sharing his gift with the rest of us. So, the history of Sugar D and Jimmy Jacobs, the hilariously abridged version, before I get into a break and then I go into the real story, the meat and potatoes, the Suge D director's cut edition of The Flight. So, here we go. My first time getting to really meet Jimmy Jacobs in life was at a Dragon Gate USA show, which was a joint company effort between Gabe Sapolsky and a company out in Japan that's known for having super hyper crazy professional wrestling in the form of Dragon Gate. It's the fastest wrestling alive, man. And they were doing shows in the United States. So this had to be around 2010 because this is when the WrestleMania was in Atlanta. I had a big opportunity to be able to wrestle for a dark match for Dragon Gate USA versus one of, I feel, the most underrated and best professional wrestlers I have ever had the chance to step in the ring with. And also one of Nelly's biggest fans, Kyle Matthews, who is now known as the Nightmare around these parts here in Georgia. We had ourselves a nice little dark match classic, as I like to put it. And we also came to the conclusion that not all ideas are the best ideas, even though they sound good. We forearmed the crap out of each other for a minute straight. And if there was ever a time that your manhood gets tested, it's when you're forearming another grown man for an entire minute straight. It doesn't sound like a long time, but when your head is getting rattled constantly and consistently for that whole minute, it makes you rethink the passage of time. Most definitely. So the show is over. Everybody's hanging out, mingling, trying to find out what the next night spot is, all that other good stuff. And I'm approached by Jimmy Rave. Jimmy Rave, as wrestling fans know, is a member of the embassy and has been world traveled. We talk about abuse issues and whatnot. His have been very well documented, and he's made a comeback from that recently. So glad that he is here with us to be able to kind of share his gifts as well too. I mean, the wrestling business can be, the entertainment business as a whole can be really rough in terms of how people use things to stay afloat. And it really gets the best of people sometimes. And I'm just glad some of them are able to make that comeback because not all the stories are positive. Getting back on track, he comes to me and he says he needs a bit of a favor. He promised some of his friends that they would be able to get a ride over to the $5 wrestling show live that Colt Cabana and Marty DeRosa do. Both of them also big-time podcasters as well, too, about more wrestle-centric stuff. Feel free to look their stuff up. They're definitely worth subscribing to and listening to. And he says that they need a ride over to this particular event. So me, being the younger and also having a ton of respect for Jimmy Rave, of course, no questions asked. So we leave with our motley crew in the car, and he didn't tell me who the people were. He just told me that he needed they just needed a ride. So in this car is the motley crew of Sugar Dunkerton, Jimmy Jacobs riding shotgun, Austin Aries, El Generico, and Pac No, not Tupac, even though many, many, many people feel he's still alive. We're talking about Pac, the man that gravity forgot, who would later become WWE superstar and two-time, I believe, cruiserweight champion, Neville. Yep. Yeah, two-time cruiserweight champion, Neville. So everything was good. Everybody's on a high, having a good time. Yada, yada, yada. Like, everything's good. Now, the reason why I said I have to set the tone as to how I know Jimmy Jacobs, because there's two stories I have to tell before I can get into the third story. I can't say the first time I met Jimmy Jacobs was like one of those affairs where I just knew we were going to have deep conversation so many years later. Definitely did not. Because the night that I met him, he was definitely kind of grumpy. Like, you know, everybody's having a good time, but he's just riding shotgun, glamorously miserable. You know, he's got the scarf. He's got the really cool kind of glammed out 80s rocker David Bowie jacket, the tight pants. You know, the nails are painted up. He's got the mascara with the 5 o'clock shadow, all that other good stuff like that. And we're on the way to what's going on. And I just remember him having this scowl the whole time while everybody was just kind of laughing it up and having a good time. And at the time, not that I'm still not very positive, but it was like a battle of supreme positive versus dark negative. Like, for those Dungeons and Dragons fans, you've got chaotic evil and like lawful good, like sitting next to each other. And you know, I say this just joking now because I'm big on sometimes you can't always go off of the first impression, because I'm sure he probably thought I was just insanely overly positive, and he was just, and I thought that he was insanely overly negative at the time. You know, we had been running around. You know, the show was fun. Everybody was hungry. We went to the Steak and Shake in Atlanta. Now, this is how I knew Steak and Shake obviously had to be a new institution to Atlanta, because it was nowhere near the service level of the ones in the Midwest that I got introduced to. Like, we rolled in the Steak and Shake at 12 midnight, and we didn't get food until like 2 o'clock. So in that span of that, everybody's sitting, everybody's talking, joking around. Not that everybody wasn't perturbed, but we were just making good company at the time. And I just remember Jimmy, you know, he's holding his chin up with his hand. He's tapping on the table super hard and whatnot. And like, just stuff was just coming out. He's like, man, he's like, this night, like, oh my God, when is this night just gonna just be over? I'm just so over it and everything. And I kept trying to come back with positive stuff, and it was just like a tennis match of like negative, positive. So he would say that, and I'm like, hey man, you know, well, at least you're being able to spend it with your friends, and you know, it'd be one thing if you were having a bad night by yourself, but you know, I think you're making the best of a bad night with people who care about you, who like you and whatnot. And he's like, oh my God, are you always like this? And I'm like, unfortunately for you, but in a great way, yes. Yes, I'm always like this. He's like, oh my God, Sugardunkerton, I can't do this all night. And he's like, when is this food getting here? Oh my God, it's been almost an hour and a half. And I'm like, man, that just means that when this food finally gets to you, it's going to be so good because you had to wait this long. It's just going to make it so good. And I just remember him giving me this hard look for like a 20 or 30 second period that was like, bro, if you don't fuck up, it's like, bro, if you don't fuck off with all this PMA shit, I'm going to stab you with a spike. So I was like, okay. So I chilled a little bit. They finally came with our food like 2 hours later. I think we all got our stuff for free. And I'm sure he couldn't have been happier to have been separated from PMA AOK Suge D around the time. And that was the first time that I ever met Jimmy Jacobs. And I just knew that if he ever saw me again, he was going to avoid me at all costs. Like, I just felt it. So, lo and behold, I do see him again. This time a few years later at Beyond Wrestling. and he actually stayed over at the promoter's house as well as myself, going into the next day because I believe we were both waiting for flights the next day. My memory of this one was just the fact of feeling that I just knew that he was gonna remember Atlanta and just either be hyper mean to me or just not speak to me whatsoever. Like I just knew that was probably gonna be the case. So I remember getting to Drew's house, and going inside. Jimmy had already made it to his house, and at this time, his style had changed over to, I think, animal prints. He had the still the tight pants, but now I think they were more electric in the colors. Like I could have remembered something like pink pleather maybe, and he also had highlights in his hair now. So like I believe he had pink in his hair as well now too at this time. Now I'm saying all this because it's factual, but I'm also saying this that he makes it work. That's his style. That is his look, and he makes it work. Like I don't think he's running into any kind of problems as far as everything goes with being able to get the right kind of attention off of a very eccentric look for him. We wake up the next morning, and I'm stumbling around, brushing my teeth and all this other good stuff like that. And when I come out, Drew's mom, by the way, Mama Cordero, I miss you. I miss your cooking. I just miss your good spirit. Like, I love that woman. I do. She makes the best Oreo brownies, guys. Like, so I put the whole show on pause just to put that over. Like, I do that. So she's coming out and she's like, oh my God, Shug. She's like the girl that you brought back home the other night. She's just so cute. Like, I think she's asleep over in the room. And I'm like, Mama Cordero, that's not a woman. And she was thrown off because of the fact that, like, when Jimmy went to sleep, he straight face planted, so his face was covered by, like, the sheets and the pillow. So all you could see was the back of his head, which had, like, the pink highlights, and then, like, he had a little bit, he had a little bit of his body sticking out. Like, his upper body was covered, but you could see, like, the pants and everything. So she just assumed that, like, I got a girl or something like that or whatever it is. And I'm like, nah, like, if it were a different situation, like say if like this were a prison situation or whatever it is, I'd be happy. Like Jimmy would be a prize, to have in prison, but nah. And I just remember her double taking in the room and then double taking back. And she's like, well, that is a pretty man. And I'm like, yes, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. So later we go to have Chinese and I'm acting real low key because I'm just waiting on, not even waiting, I'm just trying not to mess this up where like he, things explode between me and him, which I think is going to happen because I just thought he's still probably on the whole, like, don't nobody want to hear Shuggy and his like positivity shit. Like say something positive. I wish you would say something positive. I'll knock your motherfucking lights out, And we get to the Chinese restaurant and dude is, laughing and, we're cracking little jokes. And I'm not saying like he's studio audience laughing like his check depends on it or nothing like that. But it was just cool to see him kind of open up and laugh a little bit and just be chill. And this was like a layer that I hadn't got to see of him yet. So in the process of us talking, I brought up Atlanta. It just brought that up. He's like, man, that was just a bad day. It was like a blur, He's like, you're not a bad guy, Sugardunkerton. He's like, we've got some different philosophies, but you're not a bad guy. And I was like, wow, okay. I just caught him on a strange day. And I know that definitely taught me a lesson because sometimes, we get that first impression of people. And sometimes that ain't the best impression. Granted, it was the first, but it's not the best. You never know when you're catching somebody, and sometimes it can take those other interactions or time or just different situations, like just to be able to change what you thought you knew about somebody. We had a great time. We had some awesome Chinese food. We went our separate ways. And I just remember, I was like, man, things are only just escalating in a positive way between me and Jimmy, before you know it, like, we're going to be playing PlayStation together or whatever. Little did I know that there would be a flight that would come that would completely change the course of not just Jimmy's life, but mine as well too. Two eccentrics sharing seats during a flight would cause strange ripple effects in worlds of not only how their lives were lived, but in terms of how they viewed where they were at in their lives. That's the dramatic way of putting it. If I had to get to the street level of it, there was some crazy ass shit that went down. It was funny as hell, and it led to like some really cool stuff that happened afterwards. But if you want to know that stuff, you are just going to have to sit tight, get through this last little message that I got for you, and we will have ourselves a little conversation to expound upon the Talk Is Jericho snippet that was told on that podcast, now to be told on this podcast in full HD, 3D, IMAX, in living color, all of these mediums visual, none of them audio. So just keep it locked. Funny Cast Show's coming back. And hopefully we drop a little story on you that's going to change how you view some things. Funny Cast Shows. You know, Suge D doesn't just talk a lot of smack. I also smack a lot of trash talkers. And you can find me doing just that on these particular dates. December the 9th at New South Pro Wrestling in Hartselle, Alabama. December the 14th at IWA Mid-South for Simply the Best in Memphis, Indiana. Freelance Wrestling in Chicago, Illinois on December the 15th. December the 17th at Mucha Lucha Atlanta in Norcross, Georgia. December the 27th in the heart of Atlanta at Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment, Show of the Year 4. December the 28th at Nova Pro Wrestling, which will also be streamed live on powerbomb.tv. Wrestling Theology in Carmel, Indiana on December the 29th. And just recently added for the new year on January the 13th and January the 14th of 2018, PWX presents the X16 tournament, which I will be featured as one of the 16 entrants vying for the total victory. Bookings are at Sugardunkertonbro at gmail.com and merchandise is at prowrestlingtees.com/Sugardunkerton. Support your boy. Come out and scream for me. Let's get back to more Funny Cast shows. Welcome back. Yes! We are back for more of Funny Cast shows. This is what you came for. Talking a little bit about the mess and the stress that comes along with chasing success. And now we have reached that portion of our show. Story time. And I can't stress enough that this is one of those stories that I thought was always going to be locked in the vault. And after it got blown wide open on the Talk Is Jericho podcast, now it's not. And for everybody that's been texting or tweeting, wanting their own detailed account as to what's going on, everybody gets it at the same time now. So everybody can get that same accounting and we can move forward on it. And I just feel like it's worth totally putting this out here in the world. So without further ado, here we go. Strap it in, lock it in. Make sure that your volume levels are set proper because this one could go a little while. But like, you know, in a good way. I hope so anyway. If it sucks, don't tell anybody. So your boy is popping a flight over from either, I want to say Indiana or Chicago on the way to Providence, Rhode Island for Beyond Wrestling. Now, when it was all said and done, they had to make a stop over in Michigan. So I go ahead, I have my layover, you know, the normal flight related stuff like hurry up and wait. And then you get in and people knocking you over with their suitcases or swatting you in the butt or whatever it is. Just all the cramped foolishness that comes with flying commercial. I finally get my bag in the overhead compartment. I'm having a seat. The dude next to me like has a seat and whatnot. Everything's chill. And I'm just kind of like sitting around just waiting, you know, I'm used to it. Then he arrives. Obviously a little bit disheveled because I think he thought he was going to be late for his flight. Probably was, but you know, he made it through the grace of God or whatever it is you choose to believe. And there he was. And there's no mistaking him because Jimmy Jacobs is Jimmy Jacobs. I believe his attire this time was I'm trying to put this together. It might have been, I want to say it might have been a different variation of the pink pleather pants again. Bruh had the button up with like this really neato scarf. It had like, crazy pattern on it. Want to say he had a leopard print suitcase or some type of animal print. I just know it was one of them suitcases that was like, you see it and you want to be like, girl, that's fierce. Like the suitcase that you saw, but he makes it work. Again, whatever he puts on, he makes work. We lock eyes as I'm moving for one of the people to get in on our aisle. And I look up, I see him and he sees me. Now, based off the previous two stories that I told you about Jimmy, I just wasn't expecting the reaction that I had got about it. And I know I had made that joke, like the next time I saw him, like we're probably going to be best friends. Little did I know how true in a way that was kind of going to come across. So I look to him, and I throw up the peace sign. The hood dude peace sign. You know what I'm saying? Like you see somebody, either you give them the nod or you throw up the peace sign. It's just a quiet acknowledgement and everything moves on. So Jimmy looks up, sees me, and I've seen his eyes light up before. I just did not know that his eyes had the capacity to light up in regards to seeing me. So already thrown like, oh my goodness. But I throw him up the deuces and he's like, Sugar Dunkerton, how are you? And I'm like, I'm good, man. What's up? He's like, hey, is somebody sitting next to you already? Like, can I sit next to you? And I'm like, if it doesn't bother anybody, man, like, sure. And the dude sitting next to me, I believe in the podcast, Jimmy made it sound like it was a little easier than what it was. But like the dude was kind of like, hey, I got my seat and everything like that. And there was people behind him, and I just remember I had asked the question in my head, what is Jimmy on? Little did I know that, that was like gonna get answered very soon. But I just remember him being so negotiable, like so happily negotiable at this point in time. So the guy sitting next to me, he looks over, he's like, hey man, look, it's all good. Listen, this is my friend Sugar Dunkerton. I just want to be able to sit next to him. It's like, look, you can have my seat. And the people behind him are just wondering like, what the hell is going on? Or is the line going to get moving or whatever it is? And Jimmy's just turning around and is like, hey man, it's cool. Everything's going to be cool in a second. Just hang in just a second. And then he turns back to the dude sitting next to me. He's like, listen, I don't see why you wouldn't want to take the seat. I get to sit next to my friend. And look, you're 2 rows up. You get to get off this plane just a little bit sooner, Like, it's cool. Go ahead. It's all right. It's a good decision. So I think the dude just not trying to cause a problem, even though Jimmy was making a ton of sense, decides to just go ahead and get up. He takes his stuff. He goes ahead and he takes his seat. I help Jimmy get his bag up in the overhead department. He has a seat. He sits down. And it's like sitting in that window seat was like sitting next to like, a fire after like getting out of a blizzard, And he has a seat. I plop down. I'm like, hey man, what's going on? And he's like, man, I just feel so good. He's like, something told me that like something was gonna guide me and it was gonna put me in a good place right now. And like, here you are. Like, Shug, like, I need you to be like my God. I need you to help me. You like just stick with me, okay? Can you do that for me? And I'm like, sure. Like I can definitely do that for you. Like, no problem. And he's like, gosh, Sugar Dunkerton, he said, thank you. It's like you're just absolutely who I needed to see right now at this moment. Like you're just a beacon. You're just my light right now, man. He's like, you don't even know it right now, but it's like the music that's playing right now, like I could see the notes. I could just see the notes right now. And this is just like beautiful music. Like your voice is beautiful music to me right now. So immediately questions are coming up in my head, just the way that he's talking. Because you got to remember, we've only had 3 whole interactions up to this point. Now in this third interaction, he's saying my voice is music. Whereas if we go back to the first interaction, he's damn near about ready to go ahead and silence my whole life over trying to see the bright side of some steak and shake getting to you late. So I'm just wondering what has boosted this along to get us to that level. So before we get ready to take off, I can't help but ask, because in the interest of transparency, I just gotta know. So I'm like, Jimmy, is everything okay? Like, are you good? He's like, listen, I'm like, I might have got into stuff. I was at the gathering the other night. The gathering, for those who don't know, by the way, is the gathering of the Juggalos. It's a big get together that features, live music and wrestling or whatnot for Juggalos, which are the name of the super fans of the Insane Clown Posse, the controversial rap group that, they also get down. They like to have a good time and whatnot. So a lot of wrestlers get together at their shows and they put on, some good old fashioned action. And sometimes there's some things that go down over there. And Jimmy definitely got down on some of those things, as he further detailed to me as we kept talking. Now, I never thought that I would be living a scene out of the Wolf of Wall Street in my real life, but that's exactly what was happening as he detailed to me how he got in the state that he's in at the moment. So he proceeds to detail it for me. He's like, so, the gathering of the Juggalos didn't end till like 3 or 4 in the morning. I know I had to make this flight or whatnot. So, I had to stay up. So, somebody had some X. So I took one and it just didn't hit, and like I took another one and I took another one. And I just thought like maybe I got some bad stuff, and like, I get to the gate and like, whoa, everything's hitting at the same time, man. So I'm just, I'm feeling good. I just need somebody to just kind of like help me and be with me. Like, be with me, Sugardunkerton. Help me. Like, just guide me. And like, I know everything will be fine. And I know you'll take care of me. Everything will be good. So Jimmy is literally living a scene out of the Wolf of Wall Street where the lemons like kick in way late. So you think you got some bad stuff, and then all of a sudden you got some good stuff. Like, too much of it. And he's just chilling, man. He's very childlike in like how the wonderment of everything is hitting him. And he's explaining how he's seeing colors and all this other stuff like that. And I can't knock it, because he's not hurting anybody. Like, everything's all good, So the plane takes off. Like, he is not just he's in the clouds, and he's in the clouds. Like, the window is wide open, and like you could tell he's just really enjoying the sights that he's seeing outside with the clouds and whatnot. Now, me being a young wrestler and trying to gather some of the success that he's had on the independent circuit, this is a great opportunity. We get to talk, not just as people, but, on a professional level, we get to talk, and he gets to share some advice and experiences with me. Even in this state, I know that there's got to be knowledge that Jimmy can drop, So we just get to talking. We start asking about what's going on in each other's lives, all this other good stuff. And it's cool because he and I have never had that opportunity to really be able to talk the way that we're talking right now. And granted, it might have been a little influenced by like pills, but like still we're here. Like, we're having this conversation, and I can tell like the stuff that he wants to talk about and he brings up is very genuine. And I truly appreciated that. One of the subjects we started talking about started steering more towards my success, or what I looked at as a lack thereof of success in professional wrestling. So we get to talking, and I start asking, about things he's done and ways he's managed to keep it fresh and whatnot. And I didn't know that the answer he was going to give me was also going to be affecting at my life at the time. So this is what I mean by like the conversation got a little deeper than I expected it to go, but in like a really, really cool way. So I'm asking him a little bit about like, what he does to stay relevant, to stay ahead of the game, so that he's always an attraction on the independent circuit. And then Jimmy proceeds to ask me a question. He's like, Sugardunkerton, and I don't know why he said like my full name like every time he referred to me. Like, he didn't say man, he didn't say dude, it was always Sugardunkerton. He's like, so Sugardunkerton, he's like, why don't you tell me why you don't feel like you're further ahead in the business? and I was kind of stuck, you know. At the time, I was already kind of frustrated because I was frustrated with like my position as far as wrestling goes. I really didn't know what my lot in life was because I was kind of having a duality in regards to the kind of work that I was doing on the regular while also trying to raise my profile in wrestling. I was doing things, but I couldn't say I was fulfilled. And I was just trying to find what that next thing would be so that my happiness would be there. And it was really affecting me. Like it was affecting relationships and just ways that I viewed things at the time. And it was really wearing at me in private. I would never let anybody know that in public, unfortunately. And I wish sometimes I did let that be known a little bit because maybe I could have sought help sooner because it was really starting to wear on me to the point of depression. But I just thought that would have been revealing weakness if I had did that. So I was stuck. I was lost. I was like, maybe just, I haven't had that right person to vouch for me or that right match or that right moment where somebody's just like, hey, we got to keep an eye out on Sugar Dunkerton. And then he started to break me off, man. Like, he's like, that's where you're messing up, man. Like, listen, you're a cool dude. You've been at this a long time, and you need to start looking at things a certain way. He's like, you are waiting on someone to validate you in terms of what you can or you can't do in this business. And by that, waiting on them to validate you also means that they're placing value on you. And there's a strong possibility in most cases that whatever value they try to place on you, it isn't enough. He's like, why are you waiting for somebody to grant you the ability to be special and to do what it is that you do? He's like, stop asking for fucking permission to be awesome and just do it. Like, stop. Because the only person who can give you that kind of permission to just do that at the end of the day is yourself. But you've got to allow that for yourself for that to even go down. And that really messed with my head when he said that, because for a long time, it was true. Like, I was waiting on somebody to validate my efforts via, like, good job or, a glowing review in a report or, getting that nod that, oh man, your stuff was really good tonight or whatever, and thinking that was going to be the next thing. Not realizing that when you're constantly waiting on somebody's acceptance of what you do or how you do it, sometimes you're putting too much power in their hands because you're letting them actively decide whether what you're doing is worth a damn or not. And some people do use that and hold that over your head. It really threw me when he mentioned that. And then he proceeded to go into a story about I won't name the superstar because I don't want to put them on the spotlight or kind of reveal their conversations, but he was a part of a very big act in the WWE and a good friend of his, and he was told by members of management that his particular style of selling while being in this group of bad guys, and when I say selling, I mean the art of making things look like they freaking hurt, for those who don't know. But they said that his particular style of selling was almost a little too all over the place and almost too weak to look dominant in this bad guy group that was going on and having a real tear in the company. So he nodded politely and whatnot, and he shared this with Jimmy. And Jimmy said, so you're gonna listen to him and you're gonna find a way to sell less, right? So that you could look like a tougher guy. And his friend proceeded to tell him, no, I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. And he's like, isn't that career suicide? He's like, no. I look at it like this. You got one guy that they want to make sure is the bruiser and stays strong the whole time. You got the other guy who has this feel about him where he's kind of looked at as being the next guy. He does most of the talking, all this other stuff like that. I have to do what I have to do to make sure that I stand out and I get noticed and I add something special to this group. And he stuck to his guns. And even though it might have cost him, and even though it might have been one of those cases where it rubbed some of the people the wrong way, it ended up working out for him in the long run, and he ended up becoming a huge star, and being very pivotal to the framework of how this company runs now. And a lot of the times, people are too scared to take their own risk, or to go against the grain, or to piss some people off, just to be able to have that say of being able to push what they think is right and find some success in their own way. And he also shared that with me as well too, to reinforce his point of stop asking permission to be awesome. In the course of talking a little bit more as things started going on, we talked about motivations, and he proceeded to tell me a little bit more motivation wise about what makes him him in the ring. Now, the reason why I asked for you to look at the visual aid of Jimmy Jacobs is because for me to describe him just off of audio, you listen to what I tell you he wears and how he dresses and things of that nature, and you may not see a very intimidating man, but to watch him, to really look at him, to look in his eyes, it's a very intense individual when he wants to be. And a lot of that stems from very real places in his life. And I remember him telling me about why he does a certain pose. When he comes down to the ring, he gets on the top rope and he perches like a vulture. And he was explaining to me detail-wise, because this business is all about details. I feel like any sort of art that you do, and again, we're talking in this particular episode, yeah, we're talking wrestling, but this translates to any form of art, whether it be your painting, acting, music, whatever. Death is in the details. Jimmy's not a terribly tall guy, but his presence is huge. And he's like, Sugar Dunkerton, do you know why I get on that perch like that? And I'm like, I can't say, honestly. He's like, well, whenever my opponent comes down to the ring, I don't ever want them to have the advantage of ever being able to think that because stature-wise they're taller than me, that they'll ever be larger than me, if you get what I'm saying. So when I get on that perch, it forces them. It doesn't matter how tall they really are. It forces them to have to look up at me. And I need them to know while they're looking at me that, motherfucker, no matter how big you think you are or how badass you think you are, it's like you're always going to be staring up at me, and that's the way that it's going to be. Even at the end of this match, you're going to be staring up at me, a broken pile of mass. And just like even his explanation was so intense, how a guy could go from being in this intense moment of high on 3 ecstasy, but still have that emotion, that raw depth inside of him to be able to kind of unleash that when need be and to make it make sense. And it's no wonder that people are drawn to him the way that they are. And there's such a realism to how he comes across. It was then that I kind of explained a little bit more about, which will be another story for another day, about a bad experience that I had with a tryout at WWE, which was completely my fault because I wasn't being real. And he definitely had that conversation with me about being real. And that's when some things started to twist up, because he started getting into his own feelings about just the scene in general. And he just talked about how there's, well, I'll try to do it in his voice again. Like, you know, I'm sure I get a feeling like there'll be plenty of people to correct me about my inflection or whatever it is, but it doesn't matter. It's just me telling the story. But he was like, you know, Sugar Dunkerton is just a bunch of guys that are just scared to just really, really go for it and to put the details in and just be real about who they are and what they stand for in this business that we inhabit. Like, you know, I'm looking around and it's like I'm not moved anymore. I'm just waiting for like I'm good at this. I know I got a mind at this, and I know I keep doing this, but I haven't been moved by anything that's happened in this business for some time. You know, a lot has happened with me. A lot has changed, but I'm just waiting to feel anything special about what's going around at us. And it's like, for now, it's just like show to show to show to show to show, which it is what it is. But I know if I'm not feeling something for what's going on, how is anybody else really feeling anything that's going on? He's like, even what's going on tonight, he's like, when is anybody gonna feel special about what they're seeing in front of them anymore? And I don't know, man. He's like, I'm just waiting for that one thing, that sign, that calling, that like there's something more than what I've already seen, like something to really push things forward. So I let Jimmy know after he told me that. It's like, you know, I couldn't imagine you feeling that way, Jimmy, but like you got to remember too, like if you're not seeing the change that you want, sometimes you have to be that change. You have to be the one that's pushing it out. So the same way that you're telling me I shouldn't be asking for permission to be awesome, which, yeah, I'm definitely going to take to heart. It's like, what do you feel like you can do or you could put out there in the world to really change things? Like to really flip things on its ear, because if anybody was meant for it, it's you. And it's like a light switch just got turned on up there, you know, like there was just this glow that came over him, and it was just crazy to see. It was a little scary, but it was crazy to see. And he's like, oh my God, that's it. That's been it the whole time. Fucking Sugardunkerton. Oh my God. I got to do this. I know what I have to do now. It's like, my job is to teach. It's to give back. It's like, I've seen everything. I've experienced everything. I've got to give some of this knowledge back. He's like, I've got something waiting on me. Okay, what's waiting on you, Jimmy? A job. You know, Brian, he's trying to help me out. When he says Brian, he's talking about Brian Danielson, aka Daniel Bryan. Quite possibly one of the greatest in-ring performers, and who had one of the most fun and just moving rises to becoming a WWE champion that I've ever seen, that unfortunately got cut kind of short because of concussions. But he's currently seen as the general manager on SmackDown every Tuesday night, and the two of them go back from their Ring of Honor days. So when he's bringing up Brian, that's what he's talking about, like Brian Danielson. And he's like, Brian was telling me there's like a writing job out there, and it's like, you know, at first I wasn't really thinking about it, but I need to take this. I need to move forward with this. I got to, like, I've got to give back in a different way. I've got to. And it was just so real, and it was so crazy. Like and when I tell you, we talked about a million things on that flight. Like, it was at least an hour and a half that we were talking. To me, those were the big highlights, because he hit me in a certain way, and I got to him, I believe, in a certain way, because it got him to think a little bit in terms of like what was next for him. Because while he was enjoying this immense high, you could just tell he was kind of putting out there that something was missing. He was waiting for whatever that sign was to move the ball forward. And for myself, I was just waiting on something to change how I was going about things, because I was living the definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And I just can't believe the circumstances that kind of brought us together to be able to change both our stars when it was all said and done. We talked a little while longer, and we finally landed. And the moment that he landed, he asked me to wait with him. And he actually made a phone call, and it was very moving. He made a phone call right after the plane landed to Brian Danielson. And I just remember hearing the relief in his voice. He's like, Brian, oh my God, thank God I didn't, like, I didn't know you were gonna pick up, but I'm so glad that you picked up. Like, oh my God, like this is everything to me right now. Like you're like God. You're always there when I need you. He's like, and I think he may have been a little worried about him too, just because of how, just how he was talking. Because he definitely was spaced out, but it was like how he was talking. He was like, no, I just landed on the plane and everything. I'm sitting next to Sugar Dunkerton. Yeah. Oh, he says, hi, and thanks for the music. And I laughed a little bit about that because I didn't even think he would remember that. When Brian Danielson was let go for the infamous tie incident where he choked out one of the announcers that was immediately let go the very next day. One of his stops was Chikara Pro Wrestling, and I was asked to cut his music so that it started off like the intro to Wild and Young from NXT around that time, and then went into his music. And he really liked it, and he didn't get the chance to thank me for it because I wasn't booked for that show. And then there was another show where we were supposed to meet, and that didn't work out either because I got into a car accident. So I just thought it was crazy that he still remembered that, and he still thought to thank me for all that when it was all said and done in passing. So it's just funny little stuff like that, like people remember. But they get to talking, and he let him know that he was very interested in trying to take the job, and he wanted to know how to move forward on it. And he asked if he could put in a word for him, and he did. And the rest was history. And we got Jimmy Jacobs, the creator of The List, who definitely left an interesting mark on WWE for the time that he got it. And now is back on the independents. And I love the fact that he's out, aside from just performing, he's out doing seminars and doing his thing because he never forgot what the epiphany was that he had up there in the sky. It was time to teach, and it was time to give back. And it's weird for us in life sometimes because I can just remember that Cat Williams joke where he's talking about, there's certain situations in life where you don't expect to learn nothing from certain people. And he was talking about how Flavor Flav, how Flavor Flav was going to teach him anything about life. It's not that I couldn't learn anything from Jimmy. It's just I didn't expect to learn something so profound the way the situations were set up from Jimmy. And this is me personally telling Jimmy Jacobs, thanks for changing my life. I sincerely wish I had knew the concept of not asking for permission to be awesome much earlier. But you know how sometimes you can get hit with information at certain times and it doesn't have the same effect. So it got to me when it was supposed to get to me. And, I battled in the application of it even after you told me. But when I really ran with it and decided I was going to make a move with it, it completely changed everything that I knew about how I took my steps in my life. I let things go that didn't need to be there. I pushed myself harder. I stopped questioning myself just because others didn't necessarily agree with it when I knew and I felt in my heart that I knew what was truly right to move things forward for me. And most of all, I stopped putting the power in other people's hands and I gave it back to myself. And then once I started having that confidence and that power for myself, I was able to put it in others as they needed it. And I'm glad that I got to be there in the sky for when you had that epiphany. And I can't appreciate enough that it was enough for you to want to remember it, to share it with others, and to give me the permission to share it with the people that listen to Funny Cast shows. That said, Jimmy's battled a lot to even be standing as we speak. And I just want to tell him, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for still being here. I'm proud of you for doing what it took to make sure that you can ensure your quality of life. And I'm proud of you for taking a risk on yourself and knowing that when it didn't feel right, you made your own decisions. You're still making your own decisions. And I feel like you have so much, so much to give back to so many. And there's so many out there who just don't know how great you really are yet. And they're going to find out, and they're going to find out in a major way. And when I see you, I am going to annoy the shit out of you with how positive my outlook on life is. And maybe you'll have a laugh at it, or maybe you'll give me a scowl, and your mascara will probably be popping when you get ready to do it. But, dude, thank you. You're great. There's never going to be another like you. And the world's fortunate for having you. That said, I hope that you got something out of that. Like, really, like, aside from it just being a funny situation, I just want you all to know you're going to get hit with some strange stuff all the time, but there's some really strange stuff that morphs into very profound stuff if you let it. Like life-changing in the best kind of way if you let it. And we need these things to happen to us. And sometimes we don't know where it's going to come from. I mean, this is a man who, when I first met him, I'm very sure he couldn't stand my guts. And it's okay. That was his opinion. And he led to being a real changer of my stars. And you never know where you're going to find that. So be good to each other. Don't always judge a book by its cover. Sometimes you need to wait for another edition of it to come out so that you're able to get the proper judgment of it. And most of all, stop asking for permission to be awesome. Just fucking do it. That's what your life requires. Because nobody is going to give you that right to be you more than you. And you have to run with that. Even if you fail, at least you ran with it being you, not somebody else's definition of what it is. And that's it. I'm not sure what you were expecting to get out of it, listening to it. I don't know if you wanted a bunch of juice, or maybe you got exactly what you expected out of it. But that's what it is. That's the story. I'm sticking to it. And until the next time a Funny Cast shows, it's your boy Suge D. I ain't handing no permission slips to anybody about being awesome. I'm just getting mine, and I hope you get yours too. Have the best one, and leave them X pills alone unless you are absolutely sure that you're going to have an epiphany after. I think that's the best advice I've probably given out of these now 4 episodes. Holla back. This is Sugar D here, just letting you know that I do appreciate you for allowing me to slide in your MP3s right quick this week. If you wish to support the show, and by proxy me, feel free to visit www.prowrestlingtees.com/Sugardunkerton. I got the threads that turn some heads. Please order a shirt, look good in the process. Treat yourself 2017. Also, you can feel free to make a donation to the show by using the crowdsource link that's available on this landing page at funnycashshows.podbean.com, or you can hit me direct at paypal.me/SugD. paypal.me/SugD, please. We appreciate the money that jingles, but we'll gladly take the money that folds. Sugardunkertonbro at gmail.com for any kind of bookings, whether it be hosting, professional wrestling, which is my main gig, as well as any other fun stuff that you want to send me. I'm all for it. Also, if you are looking for advertisement or to be a sponsor on the show, please email me, Sugardunkertonbro at gmail.com. Not only are my drops plenty nice, but I also have got a lovely price if you're trying to make sure that you get some ears on whatever your brand or product is. Have a good one. I'll see you next week. Take care.